Hello everyone. Welcome to the Coyote Country Homestead. It was nice weather last week and I had some time to get some chainsaw tasks done that I need. So I'm just out here looking at some of the brush piles that I've got put together for when I get my tractor. Then I can get here and get those cleaned up and put away. I got all kinds of projects backing up here at the homestead and really need to get that tractor. A little frustrated on what's going on with that right now, but let's talk about that real quick. So the dealership found a replacement axle overseas, and that's great. But I'm having trouble getting out of them is a firm delivery time on when we're going to get that part delivered here. So I mean, we all make choices, right? So I'm being impatient, and I don't really think it's the dealer's fault. The dealer's working within the network that they have. And here's the thing: I am saving about $7,500 if I'm buying the last 2023 model that they have on the lot and in the Workmaster 40. And I could choose to move up to a Boomer 40, which they have on the lot right now. But the difference in price between those two tractors is $7,500 for me, between the 2023 Workmaster 40 and a brand new 2025 Boomer 40. And so the stats on those are very comparable. Both the dealership and myself had a hard time finding an additional $7,500 worth of value by moving up to the Boomer 40. So if my impatience gets the best of me and I just can't wait for the dealership to get this Workmaster 40 thing, I always have the option of going out and plunking down another $7,500 check to buy a Boomer 40 at the price that I would have paid for it anyway and give up the discount that I'm getting on the Workmaster 40. I don't want to do that. For obvious reasons. That $7,500 is essentially paying for my implements, and I'm going to be able to use that for a lot of other things. And I think it's really in my best interests to wait and go ahead and let this work its way through, let the repair get complete. And even if it takes me another month, um, I think that's just fine. I think I'll live with it. So, uh, having said all of that, let's jump into this video today. We're going to talk about how I chose this tractor and why. What were my reasons? What was the method that I used? And let's get started on that. So when I finally pulled the trigger and decided, okay, I actually need a tractor for my property out here. Wow. I mean, then the real hard work begins of researching all of the different brands of tractors, and then you find out about all the different sizes of tractors and the different classes and the concepts like subcompact and compact and utility tractor and it just goes on and on. And so I am so thankful to YouTube and all of the information that people have put out there to help with this decision. That really helped me a lot. Before we get too deep into this video, I want to throw the disclaimer out that this is the method that I used to buy a tractor. Um, I watched all kinds of information on YouTube to try and help me make this decision. And one thing became immediately clear to me, and that's that everybody has their own reason for owning a tractor, their own idea of what they're going to do with that tractor, their own unique situation based on how much land they have, what type of land they have, what kind of climate they live in. So please keep all of that in mind as we talk about this. This is the method I used to find a tractor for myself, and I feel like I've made the right decision. But I am not saying this is the right tractor for you or that this is the approach that you should take. You got to find your own way. So there's a ton of good content out there on YouTube and other places. Make sure you do your research. Make sure you spend a little bit of time in trying to answer some of these questions that we're going to talk about for yourself. And I think you'll end up making the right decision. The first thing I had to work through when I started thinking about a tractor was what was the intended use? What was the scope of the projects that I plan to use this tractor for? So, I sat down with a piece of paper and I started documenting things like knowing my property size, right? So if you're somebody who's got 1 acre or 5 acres or 100 acres, your needs for a tractor are probably going to be different. I'm sitting on about 4.5 acres, and the other thing to take into account is your property condition. So I have a very established property. My property has been completely cleared and had a house on it for more than 40 years. Whereas other people are literally carving out of the woods and clearing everything away so that they can open a spot to put a pad for a house or lay a foundation. So I'm not going to necessarily need some of the tools and some of the power that I might need if I was trying to clear 40 acres of woods compared to what I plan to do on my established property. The other thing was I wrote down the specific uses of the projects that I planned for this tractor. The thing that kind of pushed me over the edge to finally making a decision on buying something was snow. We had a really bad winter this year. Lots of snow removal. I was spending 2 to 4 hours per storm clearing snow with my snowblower, which by the way did a great job, but is just too slow. And so I knew snow removal was right at the top of my list, something that would help me handle that. I have several places in the property where I need to do some grading and some dirt work, move around gravel, move around. I've got a very large ash pile, like 20 by 10, and almost 2 foot deep, that I need to clear or move or something. As I'm doing a driveway project I'm working on, I'm going to be needing to move old asphalt. So just a lot of moving of dirt and grading, things like that. Talked about driveway repair. I've got several things related to the driveway repair that I'm going to need to be doing. Um, I have, and I'm tripping over it right now, in fact, brush. I have brush all over the place that I need to clear up. That is really sort of the other thing that pushed me over the edge to making a decision this year, is I just couldn't keep up with the brush. I was trying to use a little garden tractor and a wagon. Sometimes I would pull my truck into the yard, but that is so heavy that it leaves just big ruts and big marks in my yard. And even then, it's a lot of work to get everything picked up off the ground, up into my truck, and then empty it back out of my truck. So, the truck helps move the material, from one place on the property to another, but it is still a lot of work. And I had some trees collapse and some very large piles of brush build up that just at the end of the winter, as I'm moving into spring this year, are just completely overwhelming to me manually. And I really need a tool to help me deal with that. The other thing is I've got a pallet auction business. In addition to my full-time job, I need to be able to either ship things via freight or to receive things on pallets in my truck. And so the idea of having pallet forks for that really appeals to me and is going to be very beneficial. The final thing that I was taking into account was possible for hire work. And so this is not at the top of my list, but it just seems like when you have a tool like a tractor, eventually somebody's going to come along and say, man, I would I would pay you to do this job for me. Would you do that? And I don't want to close the door on that. I think that would be something I would be interested in doing. Now, in addition to what you're planning to do with your tractor, the or really kind of in conjunction with that, the thing I think is important to take into account are the attachments. And so what attachments are you going to need to get the job done? In my case, I knew I really wanted and was going to need a front end loader. You almost can't buy a tractor without a front end loader, so that one's kind of a gimme. But we'd already talked about pallet forks. I really want a box blade because of the grading that I wanted to do, and I think that's going to be very useful for the projects that I have out here. And it's something to move snow, whether it's a snow pusher or a snow plow. I'm leaning towards a snow plow, but a snow plow is right at the top of my list. Now, those are the things that I need, if not right away, definitely within the first year. But in addition to figuring out what you're going to need right away, think about what you would grow into. I like the idea of a grapple. Like I showed you that brush pile earlier from the work I did this weekend, and a grapple would make short use of that. Grapples are very expensive, so that is not at the top of my list by any stretch of the imagination. But if I were to stumble across a really good deal on one, I'd like to have it. And what that means is I need to have a third function remote for the front of my tractor. So that's the kind of thing that you need to know if you're thinking about buying one of those at some point. You may want to go ahead and get the third function remote added when you buy the tractor, and that is what I'm doing. I am looking at a stump bucket for removing stumps from the ground. I think a stump bucket is going to be the way to go for me, but I'm also not closing the door to putting a grinder, stump grinder on the back of the tractor. That's not something I'm planning to do immediately. So keep that in mind as the attachments and the intended use. I think those are really going to help you as you move towards making a decision. After considering the work that you want to do and the various attachments that you're going to need, well, now that's going to help, for me, that helped me identify the minimum set of features that I wanted on the tractor. I knew, for instance, that I wanted a tractor with four-wheel drive. Again, that's one of those things that's like a front-end loader. You almost can't buy a tractor without four-wheel drive anymore. We've talked about the front-end loader. I knew I was going to need the front-end loader. That was kind of an odd place for a cut, but the dealership called me right as I was recording this video. So I wanted to go ahead and take that call because I've been waiting for his call for more than a week now. And the good news is that the axle is moving, it's in customs, and now we're just waiting for it to clear customs. So again, that's one of those frustrating things that none of us really has any control over. And so the dealership can't control customs any more than I can. We've just got to wait for it to clear. This is the second week in March right now as I'm recording this. And what that means is I'm really hoping that by the end of this month, my new tractor is delivered, maybe sooner, but it's definitely looking up. So we were talking about the features that you would want on your tractor. So for me, it was four-wheel drive, front-end loader. I knew that I wanted skid steer. I'm going to trip over this every time I say it. SSQA, skid steer quick attach. I wanted the third function on the remote, or third function remote on the front for either a grapple if I should get one, or for possibly a blade, a snow blade, so that I can control the angle on the blade from the cab and not have to get out and change that. I wanted two remotes on the rear. Definitely one for like a hydraulic top link, but then on a box blade, maybe also the ability to control the angle of the blade. So that was going to be important to me. And then weights for safety, because safety is a huge thing for me. I don't want to die or get maimed because I decided to buy a tractor. So I wanted to either, and these are things I wanted to talk to my dealership about, were whether I needed to add fluid in the tires, or whether I needed to add wheel weights, or what I needed to do to properly weight this tractor so that it was safe. All of those were like my minimum level of features that I wanted on a tractor that I felt like I needed to get at the dealership at the time that I purchased the tractor based on what I was going to be doing with it. And so the things that I didn't go in and tell the dealer is I didn't come in and I say, I'm looking for a tractor with such and such horsepower, or I'm looking for a tractor of such and such frame size, because I wanted to present to them my case of all the things we just talked about and then hear what their recommendations are. I feel like this is their job, is to match people up to tractors And so the more information that they have, the better a job they can do to help me make a decision. And I had done my research of the various brands before going in and talking to the dealers. So I kind of had an idea what I thought they were going to recommend. In a few cases, I was a little bit surprised that they either went up or down, but for the most part, they came in pretty close to what I thought they were going to recommend. And in this case, what was pretty much universally recommended was a 40 horsepower tractor, a compact tractor, not a subcompact tractor, and then it was, matching up the features after that. So additional priorities for me. Now these are my priorities, so they'll be different than you. Um, I wanted a new tractor with a warranty that I knew I was going to be able to count on and depend on. I am not a mechanic, and I am mechanically inclined to a point. I can do certain things on my own, but I wasn't ready to step out there with no support. So having both a warranty was important, but also having dealer support. I needed to be able to pick the phone up and call someone and talk to the dealer and say, I have a question or I don't understand something. And to that point, I kind of need the dealer to be close. I don't have an awful lot of time. I'm trying to fit a lot of things into my lifestyle all at the same time. And so having a dealer that is more than an hour away is a real liability to me. If I have to travel to the dealer, I mean, that becomes 3 to 4 hours out of my day, 2 hours in transportation, and then whatever I do when I get there. And I don't really have that. I don't really have the opportunity to, that's going to be a real disadvantage in my lifestyle. Here in town, I have two dealers, a New Holland dealer and a Bobcat dealer. The nearest Coyote dealer is 35 miles away, and then every other tractor dealership is more than an hour away from me. So, there was a Kubota dealer, there was a Mahindra dealer. Those are really the only other ones. Then we started to get really far away after that, like 3 and 4 hours away. So unless the dealers in town gave me a reason to not go with their product, that was the way I was going to go. And that's ultimately what I said. I went and talked to the Bobcat dealer. They gave me all the information that I needed, but they also, I don't know, it didn't seem like they really cared whether I bought a tractor or not. And I can kind of understand that from a Bobcat dealership. They're selling skid steers and excavators and much larger pieces of equipment, much more expensive pieces of equipment. So whether I bought a tractor from them or not probably wasn't overly important. It's not to say that that probably wouldn't have been an okay product, but it was also missing some of the features that the Workmaster 40 brought. And I felt like that was a better choice for me. I also, I already bought my zero turn mower from this particular dealership, the New Holland dealership, last year. Was really happy with that and the service, and I've been happy with that dealership. And so that's where I went to get my tractor, and I was really happy with the different options that they presented, and ultimately settled on this Workmaster 40. So again, getting about a $7,500 discount compared to the Boomer 40. Now my axle is on the way. It's in customs. So hopefully in the next 2 or 3 weeks, I will actually have a tractor on property here. I'm very excited about that. Once again, a reminder, this is how I went about buying a tractor. This may not be right for you. You've got to make sure you find your own way. So I think that's it for today. We'll provide more updates. I really am wanting to move forward with the driveway project. I've got to wait for the weather to warm up. It's got to be the temperatures have to be above 50 degrees even at night for the next parts of what I'm looking at doing. And we may be at least a month away from that here. So I have so many projects I'm wanting to get started on around here. Not having the tractor, not having the weather cooperate is all frustrating me. All of that is my issue. I will move past it. I will discover my patience, and we'll see more videos as I move forward this summer. So thank you so much for joining us out here at Coyote Country Homestead. I'm glad you came, and we'll talk to you later. Thank you.